Hello and welcome to our audience members joining us from across the globe. I'm Raymond Karam, the Chief Program and Development Officer here at the Arab Gulf States Institute. We're happy to have you all with us today for this webinar titled After the Ceasefire, the Regional Component of the Future of Gaza. As the title suggests, our speakers today will examine the role that Gulf states and other Arab countries, especially Egypt, stand to play in the reconstruction, security, and governance of post-war Gaza. For those of you who don't know the Arab Gulf States Institute, AGSI is an independent nonprofit institution dedicated to highlighting the importance of the relationship between the U.S. and the Gulf region through free and open exchange of multiple points of view on issues that concern the Gulf. This webinar is brought to you in partnership with ROPES, the Regional Organization for Peace, Economics, and Security. Founded in 2017, ROPES works to expand the coalition for a conflict-ending Middle East peace deal by connecting forward-thinking Israeli and Palestinian emerging leaders with like-minded peers from across the Middle East and North Africa. We're grateful to ROPES founder and president Ben Birnbaum for bringing this idea to us, and I will now hand things over to ROPES Executive Director, Ksenia Svetlova, who will moderate this panel. For those of you who don't know Ksenia, she is the Executive Director of ROPES and served as a member of the Israeli Knesset from 2015 to 2019. She is a director of the Israeli Middle East program at the Mitvim Institute for Regional Foreign Policy and a fellow at the Institute for Policy and Strategy at Reichman University. She is an expert on Middle Eastern and Russian affairs and writes frequently for media outlets including the Jerusalem Post, the Jerusalem Report, and Haaretz. And with that, Ksenia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Raymond. It's really a pleasure to cooperate and collaborate again with the Arab Gulf Institute in Washington on this very important and timely webinar. We will be discussing the future of Gaza after the ceasefire and the involvement of the Arab states. Together with me, we have amazing panelists. We'll start with Muhammad Baroun, who is the Director General of the Dubai Public Policy Research Center, Bhuth. He was previously a reporter for Al Arabi and also for Al Ittihad and an editor for Gulf Defense magazine before starting as Director of Research at Bhuth. Baroun was also a Deputy Director of Watani, the United Arab Emirates' first initiative on national identity, and a founding board member of Busula Institute. Another panelist is Hussein Ibish, a senior resident scholar at the Arab Gulf State Institute in Washington. He's a weekly columnist for the National, a former columnist for the Bloomberg, regular contributor to the New York Times and the Daily Beast, and frequent contributor to many other American and Middle Eastern publications. He had made thousands of radio and television appearances and was the Washington, D.C. correspondent for the Daily Star in Beirut. Many of Ibish's articles are achieved at his blog, Ibish Blog. Last but not the least is a dear friend, Ambassador Hisham Youssef, who was a career diplomat with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt. From 2014 to 2019, he served as Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian, Cultural, and Social Affairs of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. From 2001 to 2014, he served as a senior official in the Arab League. We will be certainly discussing the involvement of this body. As official spokesman and later the Chief of Staff to Secretary General Amr Moussa from 2003 to 2011. From 2012 to 2014, Ambassador Youssef was a senior advisor to the Secretary General of the Arab League, Dr. Nabil Al-Arabi. Ambassador Youssef is now a senior advisor at the European Institute of Peace. And now a few words about us, about ROPES. For those who are not familiar with our organization, we are a movement of young leaders from Israel, Palestine, and across the Middle East and North Africa, who share a vision of a two-state solution and the creation of an integrated post-conflict Middle East. We run various people-to-people programs that bring together young leaders in politics, business, and culture, diplomacy. We are proud to have nearly 200 alumni from Israel, Palestine, and 15 nations, Arab nations, Muslim nations from across the region, and you can learn more at ropes.org. So I would like to start, dear friends, with a fundamental question. Now, when the ceasefire was finally achieved after excruciating 2 years of war. It seems that Gaza is moving to some direction, although it's not exactly clear to what direction. There is, between the Trump plan, between the Paris Initiative, New York Declaration of Mohammed bin Salman and President Macron, and between the harsh reality on the ground, I would want for you to refer to the future of Gaza post-conflict and the role of the Arab world, the Arab states specifically, Gulf states, Egypt, other neighbors of Israel and Palestinians in this very difficult situation that we are in today. There is a plan. However, it still needs to be filled with some content and with some substance. So I would like to start with you, Mohammed, and you have each of you have about 3 minutes for opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and my thanks extends to Arab Gulf States Institute as well for this opportunity. Very briefly, I think the peace deal itself constitutes a very important scene in the way we're looking at things. It is important not only because of the US leadership of this, but the fact that the US position has also been shaped by a number of countries. And you could see the number of countries who participated in Sharm el-Sheikh. We are getting at a point where there's a galvanization of position on what is needed to be done, not only in Gaza, but also in Palestine and in the region. So this is a new push for peace, and it's regional peace, as President Trump continues to say. This is not only about Gaza. The second thing is that the security forces, we have moved from the fact that no one wants to touch Gaza security with a broomstick to the point we've got not only Arab regional countries, but also Islamic countries contributing to the security and safety both of people in Gaza and people in Israel. This is a new dimension that we are seeing. We have always talked about political recognition through the Arab Peace Initiative, which was promising to give Israel equal standing based on the fact that there is a Palestinian state. We have also seen a push towards an economic and cultural integration of Israel through the Abrahamic Accords. Now we're seeing a security dimension that is coming in to say, look, the security of Israel is a collective security. We are chipping in, but it's not the security of Israel alone. It's the security of the Palestinian people, but also the security of the region. This is a new dynamism that we are seeing in the region, and I think it's quite very important. Now, there's definitely going to be spoilers, and spoilers with an S. There's not going to be one spoiler. But at least in my view, the major threat, the major challenge we're seeing is this trend of the diversity between a trend towards a collective security where everyone is chipping in, everyone is responsible for the security of the other, and this individualistic approach to security, where one country says, it's my security, I will need to do whatever it takes, and I don't really care what others want. Now, that is what I see as the major trend. There are other stuff that we've seen we have not expected to see. There is an investment in statehood, even at the level of moving Hamas from the point of being non-state actors to a state actor. But I think that there will be more to be said later on. Thank you very much, Danny.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mohammed. Now, Hussein, I want to address you the same question. With a little twist, it seems that perhaps for the first time in a long while, the Arab states are indeed assuming much more responsibility than before and try to work together as an effort in order to prevent such an occasion, such as Gaza war, time and again. Will it succeed this time?
Yeah, a very interesting question. I mean, it's certainly the collective pressure of the Gaza war has compelled the Arab states to coalesce around a formula. And really, it's funny because it was Donald Trump's suggestion of removing all the Palestinians from Gaza and creating there a Riviera for international people or whatever. I mean, a completely bizarre, impracticable flight of fancy on his part, forced the Arab states to come up with a plausible counter to that, right? I mean, so even something as ludicrous as that really kind of begged for a response, right? You could either have the status quo continuing, but if you wanted the war to end and you wanted it to be on some other terms other than what President Trump was proposing, you had to come up with your own vision. And the Arab states eventually have coalesced around Egypt's proposal. Most of the formulae that Egypt was pushing for, when there were differences of opinion within the Arab League and within the Arab camp, I think Egypt has unsurprisingly won out. Among other reasons, Egypt's perspective is a realistic one. It's based on Egypt's immediate need for stability in Gaza because of the shared border that it has between Sinai and Gaza. So the Egyptian plan was always one firmly rooted in the day-to-day security concerns that Cairo has been dealing with for decades regarding Gaza, especially Gaza with a lot of Hamas activity. And it also is a reflection of Egypt's level of experience in Gaza. So this combination of experience and realism, I think, gave Egypt's positions a kind of let's say a gravitas, a leverage, and a dynamic push that has created a body behind it. And I think it's fair to say that most of what is directly actionable within the Trump peace proposal, the multi-phase peace or ceasefire agreement that Trump and the Arab states and others got both Netanyahu and the Hamas leadership, or at least the Hamas leaders in the Politburo in Turkey and a few in Qatar, to agree to. Most of what is actionable within that plan, it derives from the Egyptian vision as well. So again, you've got this kind of coalescing. The odd man out here that Muhammad was talking about, spoilers, there are many. Obviously, Hamas, and especially the Hamas gunmen on the ground, are one potential spoiler, because you could have the Politburo outside of Gaza agreeing to a formula that the gunmen don't implement or don't embrace or find they can't make work or something. So far, that does seem to be an issue, at least on a small scale. And whether it becomes an open break remains to be seen, but it is one potential. But the biggest single problem is that Prime Minister Netanyahu does not accept the fundamental logic behind the Egyptian proposal and behind the Trump plan. And it is really the role of the Palestinian Authority that is the sticking point. Because fundamentally, the challenge Israel has faced from the beginning of this war, going back to October 9 and 10, 2023, is that there are three potential forces that can govern Gaza. One is the IDF directly, the Israeli military, a reinstitution of a direct, protracted occupation. You have that in half of Gaza continuing, and it may provide the basis for what Trump has referred to sometimes as New Gaza. In other words, the idea of getting money from Arab states or somewhere to build housing in Israeli occupied, really it's eastern Gaza now at this point, and creating there a place for the Palestinian residents of Gaza to live. That's one idea. But in the end, you'll find that only either the IDF can control Gaza or much of Gaza, or Hamas can, or the Palestinian Authority. Those are the three. Nobody else is going to embrace that role, accept that role, or be able to do it with legitimacy. So the role of the authority becomes crucial here. And Netanyahu has refused to acknowledge any day after plan until Trump forced him into this 20-point version.
Yeah.
And the reason why is that he really cannot accept either the resurgence of Hamas rule on the ground or the development of a PA-based alternative. You have to understand, Palestinian politics are binary and zero-sum. So in the end, anything that is not Hamas and that is Palestinian and viable will, whatever on paper the involvement of the authority is or is not, the PLO and its associated entities, the Palestinian Authority and Fatah, the core party that kind of controls these groups, will benefit. They will, any Palestinian technocratic.
We'll definitely get to this later, Hussein.
Yeah. So my point is that the biggest spoiler remains an Israel that does not accept the PA involvement. Yeah.
We'll definitely get to that later, to the improbability of these options that exist right now on the ground, because one party rejects all of them, another party rejects most of them. But first, I want to get to Ambassador Hisham Youssef, since elegantly Hussein already led us to discussion about the Egyptian role. I think we can all agree that this year was very challenging for Egypt to navigate the diplomatic waters of what was happening in the US and also in Israel, with the discussions of the Riviera plans, the push for transfer, and eventually we saw the Egyptian plan in this form another being embraced. What does it say about the future of involvement of Egypt in post-war Gaza restoration and in navigating this water further on, leading the way again, together with the Arab states such as Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, to the safe shores to prevent another war there.
Thank you, Ksenia. It's a pleasure to be with you, and it's a pleasure to be with Hussein and Mohammed Baharoun. You started by saying that the ceasefire was a great achievement. To a certain extent it is, but to a certain extent it isn't, because we have over a couple of hundred Palestinians who have died since the ceasefire started. So that's, I think, has to be taken into account. So it's not a real full-fledged ceasefire that is somewhat, preventing the death of Palestinians. And Raymond at the outset spoke about three issues that I think are the crucial issues: the question of governance, the question of security, and the question of reconstruction. And I'll build on what was said by Hussein and Mohammed Baharoun. In relation to governance, Hussein's absolutely right. The problem is that Netanyahu has been saying no PA since the war started, although the PA has been working with Israel in the West Bank and has been continuing security cooperation with Israel over the years, including during the war. Because Netanyahu doesn't want to have a linkage between the West Bank and Gaza, which is crucial. And one of the shortcomings of the Trump plan is that it doesn't address the West Bank as if it is not there, and as if the West Bank is living in prosperity. Hussein mentioned that there are three possibilities. Well, the whole world now is talking about the fourth, about having a technocratic government that would have some link to the Palestinian Authority in one way or another, because, as he rightly said, it would not be possible for the governance to take place without the participation of an authority. So we will see how this issue will evolve, but until now it is facing all kinds of difficulties, as a matter of fact, including from the PA that wants to play the key role in this regard, and there is Israel that continues to say no PA in the governance of Gaza. Now there is a discussion on this technocratic government, And we will see how this would fare out, but this is one of the main challenges in relation to governance. In relation to security, Baharun rightly said that now there are Arab and Islamic countries who are willing to contribute and have boots on the ground. But then these have conditions and requirements. The question is, will Israel accept these requirements? And the United States as well. Now, there were reports that the United States has presented a draft resolution in the Security Council. I haven't seen it as of yet, but we have to see the key issues in as far as this issue is concerned, which is, first of all, the mandate. So what is the mandate? As far as Israel is concerned, they want a mandate in which these security forces disarm Hamas and achieve a demilitarization of Gaza. There are others who have other views, including Egypt, that thinks that part of the most important dimension of this effort should be related to protecting Palestinian people. That is a key issue. And the question also in relation to Israel, will Israel forego the right that they believe they have in relation to freedom of action? Can you imagine Arab and Islamic forces with boots on the ground and there are rockets crossing over them and attacking and killing Palestinians? This would be an embarrassment to any Arab or Islamic force. So there has to be an understanding of the rules of engagement, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and so on. And that is a tall order. So we have to see how this would be dealt with as well. And finally, in relation to reconstruction, and I think what Hussein mentioned about the Egyptian plan and so on, the Egyptian plan was absolutely, as he said, a response to the idea that was presented by President Trump in relation to the Riviera. And the message from Egypt and the Arab world and the Islamic world that adopted the Egyptian proposal, that was prepared with the help of all kinds of countries, including institutions like the World Bank, the UNDP, and others, is to send a message that no, you can't send all the Palestinians out and start reconstructing Gaza. No, Palestinians are the ones who have to reconstruct Gaza. And that was the whole point. And Egypt kept insisting that this is the case. And of course, Egypt kept insisting that mass displacement is not accepted. And Jordan did exactly the same, and so on. So we will have to see how this would be dealt with. But I am not optimistic on that front. From what I see in relation to the Israeli practices regarding humanitarian assistance. So Israel has not abided by its commitments that it agreed to in the first ceasefire in relation to humanitarian assistance. And these were repeated in the Trump plan, and they are still not abided by. So the number of trucks, the food that enters, the medicine that enters, everything that is supposed to enter Gaza is not entering. And we have to see how Israel can be pressured in order for this to be implemented.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think that it's quite clear, but we will develop further on the issues of course, security and the perception of security, because, well, you know, the region and Israel seems to perceive it in a very different ways. So some middle ground apparently must be found for that. I want to remind all of the attendees that you are invited to send your questions to our chat box, and we will try to with the help of our participants to answer as much as possible, but please start sending them now. For now, I will use my prerogative as a moderator and I will address a question to each of you. We will start in the reverse order. So Ambassador, continuing from where we ended, and you mentioned the resistance of Egypt against the ideas of displacement of the Palestinians. Do you believe that the pressures that seems to be mounting between the Israeli leadership, political leadership, I have to underline, not the military leadership, and between Egypt has to do something with that? Because we saw a lot of accusations that I addressed at Egypt, that Egypt amasses troops at the border, that Egypt is preparing for another war. And it's been, quite a discussion, not only in Israeli media, but also an international one. What is your take on that?
Well, for the last 46 years or more, Egypt has not constituted any threat towards Israel. As a matter of fact, at one point in time, there was cooperation between Egypt and Israel on all kinds of security elements. And whatever Egypt requested in relation to adding forces when Egypt had a big battle with extremists and terrorists in Sinai, Israel always accepted the requests made by Egypt. So to come now and say that Egypt is looking for having a war with Israel, I think this is, extremely ridiculous. But of course, Israel has been playing the drums of war all over the region, and they want to, the Israeli establishment, and particularly the leadership, as you underline, is trying to say we are fighting on 7 fronts. No, it's 8 fronts, 10 fronts, and so on. So as a result of this kind of narrative, this is used by Netanyahu because he wants to avoid his trial, and also his coalition can be sustained in the context of having this cloud hanging over Israel that they are at war with all kinds of fronts. And Netanyahu has been, taking all kinds of steps to attack Lebanon, to attack Syria, to attack, of course, Gaza and the West Bank, and after as well the war with Iran. And also in the General Assembly, he mentioned threats from Iraq and the prospects of having some military action as well, in addition to Yemen. So I think this is the attitude. But if anybody thinks that Egypt is preparing to go into war, Egypt has been trying to see how to stop wars since the first war started between Israel when Hamas controlled Gaza in 2008, 2009, and in 2012, 2014, 2021, and the last war. And for the last 2 years, Egypt has been working in order to achieve calm and to facilitate the interests of the Palestinians, of course, but also taking into consideration the security needs and requirements of Israel.
Thank you very much. Hussein, I want to address you this question. You, in your capacity as a senior fellow at the Institute for Arab Gulf States, you analyze quite a lot the inter-Arab relations, especially in the Gulf, but not only. And I want to ask you, in regards to Trump plan, how the regional rivalry is playing out, because we've seen in Sharm el-Sheikh, along with President Trump and President Sisi, there were 2 other states that signed, and it was Turkey and Qatar that signed the Sharm Declaration, but not Saudi Arabia and not the UAE. So there were a lot of rumors about that, a lot of discussions.
Well,
so what's your take on that?
I wouldn't exaggerate the differences that existed, which were really complex between the Arab states in the Arab League meetings and other meetings that emerged from the Egyptian plan. I think calling them the emergence of rivalries is both hyperbolic, it's an exaggeration. There were differences of opinion, and some cases had some ideological tinge to them or national interest-driven tinge to them, but they did not rise to the level of dispute. Actually, to the contrary. What happened is the Arab states coalesced, including with Qatar and bringing Turkey into the fold as well, around a vision to end the war. Now, there were differences regarding, say, what should be open to former Hamas members, and whether, former people who used to be part of a Hamas-led, say, police force or security force could be eligible to join the Palestinian police force that is being trained to govern Gaza. And there was a question about what some countries used to call the Iraq mistake, meaning, disbanding the Iraqi army and sending all these officers home with their weapons, but no jobs and no enfranchisement in the political system. And I think in the end, the Egyptian view won out. And I think what's really interesting is that there wasn't any pressure for Saudi Arabia or the UAE or others to actually sign the Sharm el-Sheikh document. That was a document reflecting the countries that had delivered the parties to the table. So Trump was there, representing in effect the U.S. role in delivering Netanyahu. Turkey and Qatar were there on behalf of, the forces that had delivered Hamas. And Egypt was the broker and had a hand in both the Hamas file and the Israel file in different ways. And there was no real need for Saudi Arabia or reason for Saudi Arabia or the UAE to sign that document. So it was not a reflection of differences. Actually, I think it was a reflection of a remarkable degree of coalescing. And I would argue that eventually, even though there were some differences over, the things I mentioned regarding former Hamas fighters and things like that, in the end, the big news, the big headline here is the extent to which the Arab countries put their differences aside and decided to back the same set of ideas, first in their own proposal led by Egypt, and then by embracing the Trump proposal as the only game in town. Not that they loved it, but that it was plausible, could work, had the U.S., and that Washington could deliver Netanyahu, and in the end they did. So this is a very important inflection point in the ability of Arab states under the current circumstances to work together, I believe.
So, Mythbuster, huh?
I think it was really a good news scenario.
Right. Thank you very much, Hussein. And Muhammad, my question to you is about the UAE and its involvement in the humanitarian effort for Gaza during the war. I saw a statement recently that was published by Emirati Minister of Foreign Affairs about the amounts of aid that were delivered to Gaza. And it seems that UAE indeed recorded very high, perhaps the biggest grantor of aid. And it seems that the good relations with Israel allowed also for more aid to be put inside Gaza. And I want to ask you about how UAE and also other Arab countries, how do they intend to use the leverage that they have, while having good relations with the Palestinians, but also decent relations with Israel for the reconstruction of Gaza and for perhaps shaping a better future, more peaceful future, stable future for Gazans, for Israelis, for the region itself, while maintaining this, not very easy, but quite interesting relationship.
I think the idea of using leverage is not something that the UAE does a lot. Because leverage means that you apply momentarily pressure to get a momentarily, result. It's not sustainable. I think what we want to create is a new vision for the region, an understanding of what we need to do. And I think that has been the underlying principles of the Abrahamic Accord, is setting up a way for us to see that we can actually cooperate with each other, we can achieve things together. This idea of using leverage either on Israel or the Palestinians, aid is aid, it's for the people in Gaza. It is not supposed to be leverage, neither on Israel nor on the Palestinians. But I would understand or interpret your question differently, is that what can we do to make sure that this momentum that we have right now can succeed and continue? And I think we will need to continue on this idea of galvanization of positions. It is not enough to have those countries who have contributed to the security part alone. We will need countries who will contribute to the reconstruction part as well. We will need countries to contribute to the political aspect that we have seen in the conference in New York. This idea that Palestinian state is actually for the security and stability of the region, all of the region, including that of Israel, not only for the Palestinians. That is the type of thing that will sustain what we're doing and will make us endure any type of spoilers, be it from the Palestinian side or the Israeli side. And I think that if there is effort to be done, it is effort in that direction. It is not just using leverage against, one country or one government or another.
Well, I think that, the word leverage, can be used also not as something that you use, to put weight and to threaten, but as an advantage, as a country that speaks to everyone and has good diplomatic connections in order to facilitate some of the moves that perhaps otherwise would not be facilitated. I think this is the more, correct term of reference. But thank you very much for your answer. We have quite a few questions here already in the chat box, so we'll try to answer them, most of them, and I will be addressing the questions to one of you. If other participants, if you have more to add, please weigh in and feel free to do that. We will start with a question from a dear friend, Nimrod Novik from Commanders for Peace. According to the draft UNSCR, the mandate of the ISF includes disarming Hamas. Do panelists expect Arab countries to undertake this mission? You mentioned, Ambassador Yusuf, that there will be strings attached. But in any case, the mere fact that we are discussing this move, I think that's quite remarkable. That's not something that anybody thought. I think, or even could assume about 2 years ago. So, Hussein, I would like to start with you.
I think it comes down to this. If it's a matter of adjudicating and implementing an agreement that has the full backing of all the sides, including Hamas, if it's a matter of implementing a disarmament that Hamas agrees to get into voluntarily and with strict orders to its cadres on the ground to give up their major weapons. I mean, not sidearms, but anything that they have that is agreed that they would give up, then I think it's possible to imagine this. But anything involving coercive disarming of Hamas will, I'm sure, not be done by any outside forces. This is basically would be doing Israel's work for it, and I just don't see that anybody anywhere in the world has an incentive to go ahead and take up where Israel has left off. So it depends a lot on what disarmament means. If it's a logistical matter of collecting, significant weapons and disposing of them, sure. But if it's about imposing disarmament on unwilling Hamas members and cells, forget it. It's not going to happen.
So a continuation of this question, I think it's quite logical to ask, do you see any kind of future in which Hamas will willingly disarm?
I think it is possible. Yeah. I think the one route is you see that them coming back where Israel has pulled back from. And Hamas is reasserting its power immediately. Now, this is very few Israelis that I've spoken to agree with me, but I cannot but see it as a strategic choice Israel has made, that by refusing to discuss any alternatives for more than 2 years, they have ensured, Netanyahu at least, I'm not saying the IDF or anybody else in Israel, but Netanyahu and his inner circle have ensured that wherever Israel pulls back, Hamas comes back. Now, the question would be, why would Hamas agree to disarm and give political power and actually rule to a technocratic government and a stabilization force? The reason would be if they decide that rebuilding in Gaza is kind of pointless, the best they could get to would be a scenario like October 6, 2023, the day before the October 7 massacres that started all this disaster going, and that is not a good path to their main goal, which is asserting their primacy in the Palestinian national movement, and that they would be better off trying to rebuild politically in the West Bank, beginning in places where they already have a foothold and support, like the old city of Nablus and the refugee camp around Jenin and places like that, and just kind of forget about Gaza, even though it is a Gaza originated and based organization. The leaders in Turkey and Qatar might decide that since their goal is taking over the PLO, basically, is what they need, and taking over the PA, they need to do it by rebuilding in the West Bank. If they decide that, they might try to order their forces to voluntarily disarm. And since it would be a matter of strategically significant weapons and not just pistols, then I think that could be done. But it would require all of that, and that's a big leap.
Worrying scenario. Muhammad, my question, not my question, but a question by Scott Seaman to you. Would you please comment on the status of plans for financing the reconstruction of Gaza in terms of which countries are willing to provide what types of money, expertise, and logistical support for the undertaking in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. But if I may just add a few comments to what Hussein just said, is that one, the disarmament of Hamas was agreed as part of the New York Declaration that preceded the Sharm el-Sheikh and was signed by almost everyone, including the Arab League, the EU. Everyone agreed on this. So there's no problem with that. I think what we see is the how. How is this going to be disarmed? And I think the Israeli perception, at least some of it, is that this is the Islamic forces going in and, as Hussein said, that coercively snatch it out. The second thing is that disarmament of not only of Hamas, but previously of the PLO was based on the Oslo II Accord in '95, which gave them, they gave them certain weapons for internal security. That was part of a Palestinian state, an agreement towards a Palestinian state. And I think if we have this coming back again, it would become something that everyone will support. I think even possibly including Hamas. Taking the PA out becomes a problematic aspect, because if this is what we want, a Palestinian state, then there has to be a representative. And I think this is where the controversy is on. Very quickly on this idea of funding of reconstruction, I think we need to look closely at what's happening in Syria. Definitely the reconstruction size is far different because of the destruction in Gaza. But there has been a very clear indication that any reconstruction of Gaza will have to be based on the fact that this will not happen again, because we've seen this reoccurring over and over again. And our view is that the only way we will stop this from happening is by having it be part of a Palestinian state, but also an involvement from not only the Arab and the Gulf and the Muslim countries, but also from international donors, including the US, because the US will have to have a stake in making this work, not seeing whatever is being built destroyed tomorrow under one pretext or another. Who is going to pay what and how much? I think there is coming up a donors conference in which this is going to be agreed. I don't think we will need right now to say who's going to be the highest bidder, who is going to pay more. I don't think this is the approach. I think we will see things similar to what we're seeing in Syria, including the idea of sustainability of that reconstruction by making it part of an investment. President Trump has mentioned this one way or another, and this Rivera element, and it was presented in a different way, but that element of having an investment from even US partners is going to make sure that Israel will think twice before it bombs it again. And I think that was the underlying concept.
Muhammad, we have another question that correlates to what was asked before. It's a question by Guy Seaman, who is a board member of ROPES. Will Arab countries commit funds and actually start rebuilding while Hamas is still partly viable? I mean, it's quite clear that it's viable today.
Yeah, but remember that we have different stages, and rebuilding is not the immediate stage. The immediate stage is on first the swap of the the prisoners, but now we're going into the security element. That security element includes the fact that disarmament, but also the exit of Hamas fighters, but also there were discussions on the dismantlement of Hamas, bringing it under the PLO. All of these are different type of movements that would give a government's body. I don't think Hamas is going to be part of that. Again, this was part of the New York Declaration.
It's clear. Ambassador Yusuf, the question that also comes here from the chat box. Could the public opinion regarding the Trump plan and the Arab states' participation in it be an issue for implementation of the plan? Are the leaders concerned to look more as collaborators of Israel and Trump and less as the force for the better future for the Palestinians? The question of perceptions and images, which is very powerful, of course, in our discourse.
Let me build on what was mentioned by both Hussein and Mohammed. Disarming Hamas is a process. The problem is that Israel feels that this has to be done in a very short period of time. Experiences around the world of disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration takes years. And this has to be understood. But we have an Israeli government that says we're not going to move to step 2 or stage 2. And this is not only in Gaza, this is in Gaza and also in Lebanon, except when this takes place. And this is impossible. That's the first point. The second point is in relation to the fact that if this is done by force and not voluntarily, as Hussein said, it will not work. This would be a recipe for a civil war, both in Lebanon and in Gaza, whether it's Palestinians who would do that or otherwise. You think that the Egyptian army would go and fight Hamas in order to surrender its weapons?
No.
Of course not. This will not happen. So how should it happen? It should happen in a context of a political process. But the problem is that Israel is not willing to pay any price for the achievement of this objective. All what they want to pay for this objective is to, for the military to withdraw or reallocate its forces a little bit towards the border of Gaza and still maintain some areas and so on, just like they did in Lebanon. And now they are negotiating in order for this to happen in Lebanon so that they would withdraw from the parts that they are not supposed to be in as a result of the last war with Lebanon, and so on. So the question is whether Israel is willing to address this issue in relation to achieving peace or having a political process. And as far as we can see now, is that this is not the case. And then in relation to the governance, the question also is a result of the fact that for the last 2 years, Israel has been refusing to discuss the day after. So you said that Hamas now is viable. Yes, of course it is. It is becoming more and more viable. Why? Because you left it, an area was left for Hamas to control. Okay, so they have to control it. And as a matter of fact, President Trump, when they started controlling it, he said that this is normal. They had to fight those who are committing crimes in Gaza. Of course, his position changed as a result of pressure from Israel and so on. But then if you have a vacuum, then it has to be filled. This is the laws of nature. So we have to see how to persuade Israel that there has to be a situation whereby the PA, with the help of Arab countries, with the help of a technocratic government for some time, would work on this. But Hamas is looking also for a face-saving exercise. The response to the Trump plan indicated that they are willing to take steps. And as Muhammad said, this is in the New York Declaration, but it's in the New York Declaration in relation to a context where peace is being achieved, not in the context of another step or another stage of withdrawal from the red line to a blue line to a green line. No, this is not what is required. What is required is an agreement to address the whole process to achieve a political end game. If this doesn't happen, not necessarily to have a Palestinian state tomorrow or even in 5 years, no, but to know that this is the direction in which the international community wants this conflict to go in order for it to be resolved and to achieve a situation of calm, stability, and security, as Muhammad said, for all, for the Palestinians, for the Israelis, and for the whole region. If this is not achieved, then nothing will happen. As for the perception of public opinion, my final point, of course, public opinion, if you go to public opinion and tell them we are sending troops in the context of achieving peace and protecting Palestinians, of course, we will do other things as well, but that is the main objective and that is the message to public opinion. Then public opinion would understand. But if you go and tell them, as Hussein said, we are doing the job of the Israeli army by ending the war that they couldn't end in 2 years by dismantling Hamas and taking its arms and so on, of course, public opinion will be mad and will result in tensions and so on that no government is willing to do. But this is also their position. They don't want to achieve this objective through these means.
Ksenia, can I add something here? Look,
yes,
really important point.
But be brief, please.
You look at why Netanyahu, in his inner circle, refused to discuss a day after scenario, and thereby consciously, I mean, people say they don't think strategically, they don't know. Nonsense. They knew what they were doing. They left whatever parts of Gaza the Israeli military was rowing for from open for Hamas and nobody else by not having an alternative. Why would they do that? Well, precisely because I think the prime directive, just as the prime directive of Hamas is taking over the Palestinian national movement and reducing Fatah to an irrelevancy or a minority status, the prime directive of this Israeli government, I believe, is annexation of the West Bank and strengthening the hands of those Palestinians who want to do a peace deal with Israel and achieve a small Palestinian state alongside Israel based in the West Bank, but with Gaza as well, is a completely unacceptable thing because it really threatens the project of annexation. And it is very bad to have an adversary. And they think of all Palestinians as adversaries. It is very bad to have an adversary with a plausible, achievable goal with lots of international support. Just now, Britain, France, Australia, Canada, etc., Portugal coming to the UN recognizing Palestine. It is much better to have an adversary like Hamas, which is not only vicious in its methods, but has a goal that is completely ridiculous, which is an Islamic, I don't know, emirate or something from the river to the sea. Completely absurd. That's the kind of adversary you want. You don't want an adversary with a plausible goal. You want one that will give you the excuse to do the annexation that you're hoping to do, and that is Hamas. And I think that explains why there is an actual preference for Palestinians who want to kill Israelis rather than those who want to talk to Israelis by the extremist Israeli government. They would never say this in public, but I think that is true.
Well, we remember the Minister of Finance, Bezalel Smotrich, saying exactly 10 years ago that Hamas was an asset, while PA was a liability.
Exactly.
However, I have to tell you that, given the President Trump very clear approach to the annexation and his very clear don't, it doesn't seem that this project is going anywhere. A few questions before.
I agree. That is probably the most important outcome of the whole Trump peace process.
And perhaps unexpected,
it's
for
unexpected,
some of the
it's very positive,
makers.
and it's very, what it does is it resurrects the Abraham Accord structure, because the 4 year, it was 1 year plus 4 years. that Israel was not supposed to annex. The 4 years were the second Trump term. And this is what we have now. And I think he's reminding Netanyahu, no, the Biden years were not real years. Those were 4 Trump years, and we're still in them.
So you mentioned the Abraham Accords, and here we have a question from Sinka Madeshi. I hope I'm saying your name right. Given the diverse Arab alignments since the Abraham Accords, how might post-war Gaza reshape the regional order, particularly the balance between normalization and domestic legitimacy? It also connects to what you just said, Ambassador Yusuf, on the perceptions, on the framing of various processes that are happening and so on. But actually, I want to ask Muhammad about specifically about that, because there are a lot of spins that are being flown now in the air about the revival of the Abraham Accords, and the specific names are being mentioned, specific countries are being recycled kind of as the potential joiners and so on. But I really want to ask you, after these 2 unbelievably difficult years, do you think that we are on the track to revive the Abraham Accords anytime soon? To get more people to join it, more countries?
Well, you can get all of the countries to join once you've got a Palestinian state. It's as easy as that. The Abrahamic Accords is not a replacement of the Arab Peace Initiative. It adds an element that was not there, which is the economic and the cultural element. The political element was there. It added another element, but only to strengthen it. So to think that, the discourse that we want to have more people to join the Abrahamic Accords because the Abrahamic Accords will not talk about the Palestinian state, I think that is a myth. And I think it's a created myth, and it's self-propagated, and it does not help a lot. The leadership of the UAE since the day one, since that speech at the lawn of the White House garden, has said that this is the direction. We think of it as facilitating a new approach to facilitate the Palestinian state, because we believe in the investment in statehood. That if we do not want Hamas and the others like Hamas, these are non-state actors. We need to have a state, end occupation. By this, we can end resistance. But without that, it's going to be difficult.
I want to add another question to the subject of normalizations that are connected to the Palestinian statehood and the advance that will be made on the peace track. So Asad Abu Ghazaleh asks if perhaps it's Palestinians' best interest not to be governed right now, not by Hamas or by Palestinian Authority, but by international and Arab entity that will be having a trustship over the Palestinian territories for a while, something that was actually discussed at the beginning of the war. It was rejected by Palestinians, I think also by Arab countries. But nevertheless, this is something that we still do see as something that appears from time to time, also in Israel, but also internationally, about the question of, these 2 actors are not being, perhaps one is not fit, another one is not able. So what are the alternatives to governance by either of the 2 entities?
Well, let me say one sentence to add on what Muhammad said, because I agree with him in relation to the question of normalization. Do you think that the Negev Forum can convene now? The answer is no. So you have to have some progress in relation to a political process in order for things to start moving, to going back to some form of normalcy. Do you think that the relations between Egypt and Israel and between Jordan and Israel today are at their worst since signing the peace agreements between both Egypt and Israel and Jordan and Israel? We want this to change. In order for this to change, there has to be progress. Other than that, I don't think this would happen. In relation to the question of governance again, and having some form of international body to deal with the Palestinians, this is also not accepted, now, as you said, by the Palestinians and also by Arab countries. They are saying that the Palestinians can govern themselves. And whatever happens in Gaza has to be Palestinian-led. Of course, they can be supported, they can be helped in all kinds of ways. But and as a matter of fact, the head of the Egyptian intelligence went to Netanyahu in order to see how the Palestinian security forces that are trained by Egypt and Jordan can be integrated in a process to deal with some of the security issues and requirements in Gaza. Security with a small s, not necessarily security with a capital S. Now, we have to see, because there are some things that cannot be done except by Palestinians. And you can't have foreigners coming in to arrest people who have committed a crime or something. No, this is not their job. So we have to see how this can be done. And I think some pressure, meaningful pressure, has to be put on Israel in order for this to be achieved.
So I was advised that we are already after 1 hour of our fascinating discussion. So before we wrap, I would want for you to, try a little exercise at, foreseeing the future. I know that it's very difficult. But 1 year ago, we were in the midst of the war, and there was still no prospect of ceasefire, of anything that we are currently discussing. Where will be in 1 year from now, and how do you see the Arab involvement, the involvement of the Arab states, the Arab world in post-war Gaza? Please, let's start with Hussein, Muhammad, and then Hisham.
Okay, I will go first and I'll be brief. I think it probably depends most on the outcome of the election in Israel. It's slated for October, I think, 28th, but more likely, it seems, sometime between March and May. And opinion polls and speculation suggest that Netanyahu will not do well, but, I'll believe that when I see it. And also, I don't know what a Bennett-led government or a government led by some of the other potential alternatives would be more open to some of these ideas. I'm skeptical. I'm not sure the Israeli polity, in other words, how much of what is so disruptive of the policies of the Netanyahu government are limited to him and Ben Gvir and Smotrich and these people, and how much are actually baked in to the consensus in Israel post-October 7. I don't know the answer to any of that. I guess we'll find out. So I'm not going to speculate more than to say that I think for major Arab involvement in post-conflict stabilization in Gaza, you would need to have a more constructive set of Israeli policies towards the Palestinian Authority and the question of Palestinian independence, and the two-state solution, and just a constructive, healthy relationship with the PA. And you could get that out of the election, but unless you get that, I'm not sure how there's going to be a major Arab involvement in post-war reconstruction in Gaza, because I don't think it'll happen without that.
Thank you. Hussein, Muhammad, please.
Realistically, I think we will be still in phase 2, trying to cope with this idea of disarmament, which I agree with Ambassador Hisham will take a lot of time. These are very difficult by nature. So I think by that time we'll still be facing some of the problems we've discussed today on disarmament. That's, I think, where we'll be.
Ambassador.
Well, Hussein spoke about Israel, and Mohammed spoke about the question of disarmament. Let me say that the difficulty in predicting how things would be 1 year from now is in relation to the US position. President Trump was instrumental in reaching the ceasefire in January, and he was instrumental in reaching the ceasefire back in October. So will the President of the United States continue to push and to maintain the momentum as we have seen in the last few weeks, or whether he would allow Israel to a free rein to do whatever it wishes. I think this is a key issue. Another key issue is the reform of the PA. I think it is being used as an excuse, but still, the vast majority of the Palestinian people want a reform in the PA and in all its activities. And it is, in its least popular situation since it was established. And this is crucial. And then the flexibility of Hamas is necessary. And I think the pressure coming from Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and others, I think is instrumental. And it has paid off so far. And this can continue, but it has to be done in a context that would be acceptable to the mediators and to the region as a whole.
That was very well said.
Inshallah, as we say, as always, friends, there are always more questions than answers. And we didn't touch on very important issues such as, the future of West Bank, the settler violence there, the practical aspects of the reconstruction of Gaza, the education against radicalization on both sides. But that just means that we will have to meet again and continue these important conversations. So with that, I would like to thank heartfully the members of the distinguished panel, Muhammad, Hussein, Ambassador Hisham. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for everybody who attended. We are looking forward to see you again on our future events and webinars. I invite you to visit the websites of both the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington and ROPES. Of course, I want to thank our colleagues very much, Raymond, Bushra, and everybody else from the Institute for your assistance. You have here the QR code, so you can just jump in and to visit the publications and activities of our both organizations. As for ROPES, I also invite you to join our podcast. It's called the ROPEScast, where we feature the young emerging leaders of the Middle East, Palestinians, Israelis, Arabs, who are talking about what's important and what's painful and what's interesting today. And I wish you a pleasant afternoon or evening or night, depending on where you are. Thank you very much. And with that, I will say to you, shalom and salam. Goodbye.